Hello, everyone. My name is Abid, and I'm a third-year undergraduate student from the University of Saskatchewan, and I'm currently taking a Women Composers in Music course. It's wonderful to be here today, and I welcome you all to today's segment presented by me on Florence Price, a once lost but rediscovered female composer to shape 19th century music. So, if you were to hear that piece of music without having known it was composed by Florence Price, would she have popped into your mind? Would the name Florence Price ring a bell, or would you have even considered it was written by a female composer? Often when we listen to classical compositions, perhaps not all, but most of us are guilty of accrediting pieces to big names, whether Tchaikovsky, Dvorak, Beethoven, the list simply goes on. What we fail to recognize in the moment is their female counterparts who've contributed a great deal and perhaps even more to the musical industry. With that being said, we're not fully accountable for this oversight. When it comes to classical music, in fact, female composers have been overlooked for centuries by books, concerts, and mainstream media, and are only now being rediscovered for their talents. Now, to be a woman composer in the 1900s, you carried a lot more weight than the usual male at the time, in the sense that to be a female composer meant that you're a change maker, you're an innovator, and above all, you were a leader. During the late 1800s to early 20th century, the push for women to pursue music in forms outside of the home were weak, as societal norms reinforced the ideology that women were caretakers in the home rather than working-class individuals. This prevented many women from pursuing musical composition, however, had a much larger impact on lower-class women of color who had little to no financial, musical, or societal support at the time. Among those was Florence Price, a gifted African-American female composer of the late 1800s, who is only now beginning to be rediscovered in the Hall of Musical Fame. Florence Beatrice Price, born in 1887 in Little Rock, Arkansas, was known as a classical composer, pianist, organist, and music teacher. She received her education at the New England Conservatory of Music, which is still a very prestigious and well-accredited institution in Boston, Massachusetts today, and she composed over 300 works in her lifetime, including symphonies, concertos, chorals, art songs, chamber music, and solo music. Now you may be wondering, what makes Florence Price so important among the list of lost but rediscovered female composers? And besides having a revolutionary impact on classical music composition, Price was the first African-American woman to be named a symphonic composer and have her music played by a major orchestra. This meant a great deal at the time in the United States, with slavery only being abolished less than 40 years ago and Jim Crow laws enforcing segregation between white and Black Americans. It is needless to say that as an African-American woman in the 18th century United States, Florence Price faced great hurdles in her career. From identifying as Mexican to avoid racial discrimination in the U.S., to moving her family out of her hometown because of widespread hate crimes against Black Americans, Florence Price struggled to establish herself as a composer and working woman in general. There was a time that Price aspired to pursue a career as a doctor, but felt that being a Black woman would impede on her success. Instead, she chose to pursue composition, which also was not easy at the time for her. And to make matters even more difficult, in 1931, after facing financial hardship from the Great Depression and constant physical abuse from her husband, Price was left divorced and penniless as a single mother of 2 daughters. However, she did not let this setback impede on her trail to success as a composer. Instead, she overcame this hurdle. Florence Price eventually moved in to live with a couple of her students, which to her surprise led to an even greater opportunity. She met with other rising African American artists, including Margaret Bonds, Langston Hughes, and Marian Anderson, who all helped her gain great recognition as a composer around the globe. This not only helped Price win grand awards and get back up on her feet, but it also helped her gain widespread recognition as her compositions began to be played by the Works Progress Administration Symphony Orchestra and Women's Symphony Orchestra of Chicago. Though Florence utilized a wide range of styles when it came to composition, she frequently incorporated African American church music into her arrangements. In early years, she wrote with a vernacular style, using sounds and ideas that fit the reality of an urban society. With the help of her mentor, George Chadwick, over the years, Price expanded her horizon by including elements of African spirituals in her compositions, by really focusing and emphasizing the rhythm and syncopation of the spirituals. For context, spirituals is known as a genre of Christian music that is associated with Black Americans, which merged sub-Saharan African cultural heritage with the experiences of being held hostage in slavery during the transatlantic slave trade. This spiritual style is evident in Price's Symphony No. 1, including a movement named Juba Dance, where she incorporates many stylistic African musical features. Additional to incorporating spirituals into her compositions, Price often included gospel church music as well as African instruments like the marimba. This had an immediate impact on other composers during her time, as her pieces won first place in competitions and were premiered by Chicago Symphony Orchestra in 1933. Symphony No. 1 continues to gain great praise today along with Price's Symphony No. 3, as both pieces were nominated for Best Orchestral Performance for the 2022 Grammy Awards. So it's safe to say that Florence's legacy continues to make a mark today, with composers and news channels declaring her as an inspiration for women composers around the globe. Florence's symphony in E minor, in particular, gained immense recognition when the Chicago Daily News, a popularly read newspaper in the city at the time, called it a flauntless work, a work that speaks its own message with restraint and yet with passion, worthy of a place in the regular symphonic repertory. Thus, it goes without saying that even through the toughest of struggles, Price found light in her passion as a composer and continues to make an impact today. Though her works were overseen after her death due to the Roaring Twenties and new emerging styles of musical composition, the recent discovery of a large set of her compositions in 2009 has led to a rebirth of Florence's music. Some of the pieces that were found abandoned in her summer home in St. Anne, Illinois, included 2 violin concertos, her 4th symphony, and dozens of other pieces composed for orchestra, organ, and soloists. So though her music was lost for a great deal of time, it will now never be forgotten, as Price is starting to gain the appreciation she deserves as a woman composer. Therefore, we not only celebrate women's excellence this week, but we also celebrate women composers' excellence, African American excellence, and most importantly, Florence Price's excellence. So I hope that you took something away from my segment today, and if not, I want to at least leave you with one last remark worth reflecting over. If you're not already familiar with this quote, Audre Lorde states that it is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. So the next time you choose to listen to a piece of music, rather than setting your usual playlist on shuffle, choose to explore new artists. Choose to explore new composers. Because until you start to recognize and accept new styles of music by diverse ranges of composers, you won't realize the richness it truly has to offer. With that, I leave you with Symphony No. 1, Movement 3, Juba Dance by Florence Price. Thank you.